Hey, welcome to Pro Football Now. It is week 7 in the NFL. I'm Maggie Gray, so pleased to be joined by the editor-in-chief of the MMQB.com, Peter King. We're emptying the notebook. And Peter, we have to start with the biggest story in the NFL, and that is the injury to Aaron Rodgers, the broken collarbone. Now, we've gone through the shock of the injury. We know Brett Hundley will be the backup, and he will now be starting. So what are people saying about Rodgers a few days later?
Maggie, I spoke to an orthopedic surgeon from the Hospital for Special Surgery to find out basically about the treatment as it entails, a broken clavicle and sort of the difference between doing it on the right side. Because you notice, Maggie, that in 2013, Aaron Rodgers had a broken clavicle on the left side of his body. That's obviously his non-throwing clavicle. And now he's got it on his right side, and you say, well, why is he having surgery on his right side? So, look, this doctor I spoke with, Frank Cardasco, basically said, look, I have not examined the X-rays. I haven't done this, but a lot of times what happens with a quarterback particularly, or an athlete who has to throw, say a pitcher, if he were to break a collarbone, if you're a pitcher or a quarterback, you want the bone to be the exact same length after surgery and after the rehab and after it heals than it was before, because otherwise you might end up feeling like you're throwing the ball a little bit differently. Okay, if the collarbone or the clavicle is, if the clavicle is shorter. So he said, watch for that whenever they decide what it is they're going to do. And once they decided that they were going to have surgery, part of that clearly is the fact that they want to make absolutely sure that that clavicle is exactly the same length as it was when Aaron Rodgers did get hurt. So obviously doing the surgery, probably out for the year, but there's no indication whatsoever that he won't be able to come back at 100% health in 2018, or if they're very fortunate, maybe late in 2017.
Can the Packers still make the playoffs with Brett Hundley at quarterback?
I hate to pump my podcast a little bit here, Maggie, but
go ahead.
On my podcast this week, I've got Bob McGinn, who's a longtime beat writer who covered the Packers for 38 years, and he's a pretty acerbic guy and a very realistic guy. And so I asked him this question, and he goes, "Hey, I like Brett Hundley." And he said, and I quote, "I think they're going to win a lot of games." And look, Maggie, I know as much about Brett Hundley as I do about Maggie Gray's high school life.
Oh.
Only I do know that he was a 5th round pick out of UCLA, but so I've seen him throw a few balls in my time, but I don't really know all that much about him. So, but I think a lot of people believe now that that Brett Hundley has a chance to come in and play pretty well. And also, Maggie, the one difference is the Packers' defense this year is significantly better than it was in 2013. When the last time he had his the clavicle problem. And I'll just say one other thing. This is a pretty weak NFC overall, Maggie. I could see Minnesota winning this, but are there really 2 wild card teams that you absolutely love right now? I don't know if there are. So we'll see what happens. But I think it's going to be very hard for Green Bay, but not impossible.
Yeah, we'll see what happens in the NFC West. Is a little bit interesting. The NFC East always makes it interesting in terms of the wild card. I was the captain of the tennis team. I drove a Volkswagen. That's all I'm telling you, Peter. Let's move on. My high school days. Let's move on to Pittsburgh. And Martavis Bryant, of course, was suspended all of last season, comes back now, and asked for a trade earlier this week. It's something we usually don't see in football. He kind of walked those comments back a little bit. But what are you hearing about what's happening in the Pittsburgh Steelers locker room?
You know, look, Maggie, I think what happened in this particular case is that, you know, right now Martavis Bryant basically has told the Steelers that, hey, I just want to play football and everything like that. But, you know, and Mike Tomlin said, I have no idea what they're talking about. But I do think that Martavis Bryant does want to get the ball a little bit more. In my opinion, I sort of agree with Ed Bouchette of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. This is a real head scratcher for a very simple reason. The Steelers have stuck with this guy when he's really left them in the lurch. So, you know, the Steelers aren't real happy that he has requested a trade or talked about a trade, because they say, hey, we're 6 weeks into this season and you're talking about wanting a trade. I mean, let's be a little bit grateful that you're able to play this year for us and that we've stuck with you. So I don't think the Steelers are going to be very much inclined to grant any request of his.
Peter, I want to ask you about Luke Kuechly. Obviously, a very scary moment where he appeared to have a concussion and was put in the concussion protocol. Are you hearing anything about his progress and perhaps his long-term future in football after his third, we think, concussion?
You know, Maggie, the Panthers have really kept a lid on this. They're not talking about it. When they talk about it, it's in very general terms. But I think that they want to be very careful, in treading on the NFL's concussion policy. And when you're in the concussion protocol, it's a total news blackout. And I think they also want to be very respectful of Luke Kuechly. And understand this about Luke Kuechly. I had him about 1 year ago, maybe 13 months ago. I interviewed him at length for my podcast. I ended up writing about this as well. And he made it very clear that he was going to play football as long as possible. That he, you know, was not very concerned about head trauma. And he loves football. He said, this is what I do. This is what I'm passionate about. And the great thing about Luke Kuechly is that, you know, he is such a great example, not only of a good football player, but a really instinctive football player. Totally unselfish. Team loves him. So, Maggie, at this point, I think the team is kind of respecting the concussion protocol program. My only point about Kuechly is a very simple one. If, on the play in question, Luke Kuechly did suffer a concussion, you know, to me, and again, we are speculating on this because he is in the protocol. But if he did suffer a concussion on the hit that we all saw, where it looked like he was hit in the shoulder, or maybe the side of the neck. If that's the case, that is a real scary thing, because as you know, Maggie, once you've had 1 or 2 or 3 concussions, it gets much easier and it takes much less of a hit to sustain a concussion. And so therefore, when I look at this, if indeed that was a concussion he suffered in that last Carolina game, I would be really concerned if I were him and if I were the Panthers.
Peter King of the MMQB. We're emptying the notebook here on Pro Football Now. Appreciate it, Peter. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Good being with you.
Always great to be with you. And now let's kick it to our friends at Pro Football Focus, who have one of our favorite segments. It's called, well, actually.
I'm Steve Palazzolo.
I'm Sam Monson. We are Pro Football Focus, and this is Well Actually.
Sam, the perception is that cornerback is one of the most difficult positions to play right away for young players. And while it does take time for some guys to develop, well, actually, there are a number of players who should already be considered top 10 cornerbacks after only less than 2 years of experience.
Yeah, we've got a bunch of young guys playing really good stuff right now. New Orleans rookie cornerback Marshawn Lattimore already looks like a top 10 cornerback, allowing just 9.1 yards per reception and a passer rating of 53 when targeted. Buffalo's #1 rookie Tre'Davious White is allowing less than 50% of the passes thrown his way to be caught and has 9 passes either intercepted or broken up. Jalen Ramsey, Jacksonville's second-year corner, has been playing phenomenal stuff, standing on the brink of greatness at cornerback. Has allowed a pass rating of just 35.2 into his coverage this season, which is less than the pass rating of just taking the ball and throwing it in the dirt every single play.
Your favorite stat when it comes to cornerback play, comparing that passer rating to the throw into the dirt. And look, this is backing up what we saw in college, backing up the PFF draft board just this last year. Marshawn Lattimore, the #1 cornerback, Tre'Davious White, #2. They came in at #4 and 12 in our draft board. And 2 years ago, Jalen Ramsey, our top corner on the draft board, #3 overall player. When they were in college, Lattimore, he only had 1 year of experience, but 31.9 passer rating into his coverage. We went back and charted every man coverage snap among the top cornerbacks. He was by far the top cornerback. That's all showing on the field right now with Lattimore and the Saints. And then White, our #1 straight coverage grade last year, 2016 cornerbacks in all of college football. And then you have Jalen Ramsey, 3 years of productive play in 3 different positions: safety, slot, and then his final year, outside cornerback. He didn't have the best grade in the world, but he was very good, and you saw the flashes that could make him one of the best cornerbacks. It's all showing up on the field right now. Do you have a favorite out of this trio?
Yeah, Jalen Ramsey, I think, is the guy that has the chance to be the next great NFL shutdown cornerback. Darrelle Revis is gone. Richard Sherman, Patrick Peterson each have their lapses. But Jalen Ramsey, when you consider that he's only had really 1 season in college playing outside cornerback, 1 season in the NFL as a rookie, he's now had the better part of a full year playing at Darrelle Revis-like levels between the back end of his rookie season and the front end of this sophomore campaign. He's looking like an absolute monster. He's huge, he's athletic, he's got ball skills for days that we saw when intercepted Ben Roethlisberger and was making all kinds of plays on the football in that game. And the Jags, with A.J. Boye there, don't need to lean on him schematically in the way the Jets always used to with Darrelle Revis. They don't need him to track corners left to right. They can line him up at left corner the same way the Seahawks do with Richard Sherman and just let him play ball. Let him go out there and shut down his guy, whoever it's going to be. And then those guys have maybe the league's best cornerback pairing.
In Ramsey's last 11 games, off the charts, 13 pass breakups, 4 interceptions, 41% completion percentage into his coverage dating back to last year. He's in a great fit in Jacksonville. Tre'Davious White, great fit in Buffalo. Marshawn Lattimore becoming the guy in New Orleans. And it's not just them. Other guys around the league, guys like James Bradbury playing well, Jordan Lewis, a rookie for the Dallas Cowboys. The future of the cornerback position looking really strong in the NFL.
It's time for Scott's Spotlight, where we get to tap into one of the best scouting minds in the business, Scott McCloughan, former GM, Washington, San Francisco, high-ranking executive at the Seattle Seahawks. He's done it all. And Scott, we have to start with the news of the week, and that is Aaron Rodgers and his potential season-ending injury. But let's talk a little about Brett Hundley, his backup, third-year backup. Can you scout him for us? What are his strengths and what are some of his potential weaknesses?
You know, the thing about Brett, which was really cool coming out of UCLA, was the fact that he's a big guy. You know, he's 6'3" and change. He's 220-plus pounds. Had quite a bit of success in college. You know, of course, you walk into Green Bay, you know, with Aaron being the starter, you're going to have to stay behind him and roll. But he's a smart guy. He's athletic, and he can make plays. You know, guys around him have to help out. You know, that's why there's 10 guys on offense, 11 guys on defense, 11 guys on special teams. But, you know, with Mike McCarthy, he's really good with quarterbacks. And it's not just the starter. He's good with the backups, too, just training them as the season goes on because you never know when something's going to happen. You know, it's too bad for Aaron. It's too bad for the Packers because, you know, they're a really good team. And they're contenders, you know. But even Mike came out yesterday and said, you know what, he's our guy. I believe in him. I trust him. I got confidence in him. And like I said, Mike will get him right. But the players around have to step up as well.
What can they do? I mean, in terms of some of his weaknesses, every player has a few of them. What are some of his, or when you were scouting him, I'm sure you were when he was coming out of UCLA, what are maybe some of the deficiencies that Mike McCarthy is going to have to try to hide or mitigate for the Packers to stay contenders?
Well, I think the thing about it is not so much weaknesses, build to his strengths, because that's what a good head coach does. That's what a good coordinator does. That's what a position coach does, is find out what they can and can't do. He's totally different than Aaron from the standpoint. Aaron can sit back there and light it up all day. You know, the thing with Hundley is the fact that, like I said, the athleticism, the size, you know, and just knowing, you know, sometimes in college, you know, of course he has not played a lot in the NFL yet, but it was accuracy issues. You know, but you can fix that with some underneath stuff. You're not stretching the field so much like they love to do. And I think you'll see going forward with McCarthy and the Packers is that they're going to fit his strengths, and they're going to dump the ball underneath. They're going to run the ball well, you know, and they're going to understand that, listen, it's not about him. It's about us being successful as a group.
Let's stay with the quarterbacks and C.J. Beathard, of course, third-round pick from Iowa. I'm sure you scouted him as well. He's starting now for the 49ers. How good does he have to be in order for San Francisco to not go looking for his replacement this offseason?
Well, you know, I watched him. I watched the whole game this last weekend, and, you know, I liked him quite a bit coming out. He reminded me a lot of Matt Hasselbeck, where, you know, he has some maturing to do and some growth to do, but he's off to a good start. And, you know, in preseason you saw it, and you saw it this last weekend. He's a smart kid. He's a tough kid. He understands the game. He's been around it his entire life, you know, with his family. And I think they're excited as all get out because, you know, the last thing you want to do is go in the first round saying, listen, we have to take a quarterback, because then you're stifled, because it's like, what about the best player on the board? What about this or that? If he can keep playing the way he's playing, they're going to have a tough year, and that's fine. But that's the same thing out of Alex Smith when I was there. You live and learn through it. And I think he's going to be a really good player. I really do. You know, there's some other quarterbacks I like quite a bit that are young, but I really respect him just from the standpoint of he can step in there knowing that he's not the starter, but all of a sudden get forced in and made plays, you know, and all he's going to do is get better, you know, and with Kyle and his offensive mind, it's going to make it better and better.
You mentioned that they have to make plays. I mean, when you're dealing with a rookie quarterback, are there certain benchmarks that you wanted to see when you were a general manager that a rookie would hit throughout the season in terms of getting better that would indicate to you that, yes, this could be a quarterback for us moving forward?
The thing about it with Alex was different than with Beathard, because Beathard ran a kind of pro-style offense at Iowa. But with Alex, I was more nervous about him getting in the huddle, getting out of the huddle, getting the line of scrimmage, and getting the play call before a delay game. You know, the little things like that are so important. And the outside fans usually don't understand that too much. They understand a delay game, what it is, that the clock goes down to 0 and the penalty. But there's so many things going through their mind mentally. You know, you get in line of scrimmage, reading the defense, audible if you have to, go from run play to a pass play to a run play. And it's tough. I mean, there's so many things fired at you, and each week is a new week. But you can't sit back and say, oh, okay, well, I did okay this week. You know, you're on the next game. So there's a lot of things, you know. But the thing that was good about him is the fact that going into the game, he wasn't a starter. Okay, and all of a sudden he gets forced into play, and he played well. And that's a positive thing for a rookie quarterback. Positive.
Speaking of another quarterback that did not start for his team is Jacoby Brissette. We know Andrew Luck's going to be coming back at some point. So put your GM cap on. Obviously, it's one you wore for a long time. If you're looking to flip now Jacoby Brissette after he's shown he's got an arm, he's definitely a quarterback in this league and can be a quarterback in this league, what's the price on a guy like Brissette? If you're a quarterback-needy team, what are you willing to give up to get him?
You know what? Each team sees it differently. Each team has its own qualifications for a quarterback. You know, Jacoby's a nice job. He's kind of like Hundley coming out, where he's a big body guy, athletic, got a strong arm, can make plays. You know, and the thing about it, you always want two quarterbacks. You always want to, because you never know what's going to happen from the injury standpoint, like what happened with Andrew, who not been able to play this year, and Jacoby stepping in and doing a pretty good job. Not a great job, but a good enough job to put himself in a situation to win games. You know, but you got to be careful if you get too cute from the standpoint, okay, well, we have a quarterback that other teams like, you know, and that's why, you know, the Colts trade for him, because they saw the preseason stuff and they like him. But you got to be careful to ship those guys out too quick, because then all you're going to do is draft one the next year. And now you lose a guy that you know what he can and can't do. You know him in the locker room. You know him in the meeting room. You know him in the weight room. You know what kind of person he is. How's he fit the system? You know, so you got to be careful. But he has value. You know, any young quarterback that can step in and make some plays is going to have value.
If you were Chris Ballard, the GM of the Colts, would you not trade Brissette for all those reasons you just articulated?
I wouldn't, because I learned from Ron Wolf. You know, every year we had Brett Favre, 3-time MVP, 3 years in a row. And we took Hasselbeck, we took, you know, Aaron Brooks. He says you can never have enough of them, because you never know what's going to happen on one play. And you saw it with Aaron last week. You know, I mean, it kills the team, but you got to have somebody in place that you think can do it. And that's why I'd rather pay more for a backup quarterback than a backup corner or a backup pass rusher, because that quarterback position is so important.
Let's finish it off here and talk about the Houston Texans. This offense has become very innovative. At some points, running the triple option, a lot of very interesting routes, although upon closer look, it seems like really Deshaun Watson, when he's passing the ball, is really looking at about one read. And I'm just curious, as the season moves forward, is that sustainable, or are opposing defenses going to figure it out?
Well, it's sustainable because he's making plays, you know, and I understand they get the receiver and he's rolling. But that team, you know, I love the fact of what O'Brien's doing, like you said, a triple option. You know, I've never seen it before in my life. You know, and it's a quarterback catching the last pitch and go for a touchdown or a 2-point conversion. They're doing a really good job, and he's very innovative. I really respected him coming out of Penn State. I thought he'd do a really good job in the NFL, and he has. You know, he's had some ups and downs, but that happens. And they got better talent now. That quarterback is playing really well, really well. And they got a solid run game, and of course they got good defense. It's too bad they lost JJ, but they have a good defense. They're going to be a team to reckon with. But that quarterback is playing lights out. I mean, he's making balls 40 to 50 yards down the field right on target. And that's not easy to do.
When teams get more film on him, how are they going to adjust?
You know what? They got to be careful, because you can blitz him all you want. But he's such an athletic guy, he can get outside the box. You know, and he's outside the box. He can run for 20, 30 yards. You know, it's kind of the same thing when I was in Seattle. We fell in with San Fran with Colin. Because, you know, okay, you could be aggressive all you want, but understand he can go 50 at any time. You know, so D coordinators want to sit back a little bit and say, okay, well, let's not play too soft, but let's make sure we spy the guy. So all of a sudden, now you're not getting pass rush on him. You give him time to throw the ball. Now the game changes again, because now he's hitting people, because he's accurate right now. He's rolling. So it's a two-bladed sword, really, because, you know, you want to go get him and put pressure on him because he's a rookie and want to mess with his mind and show him different schemes. But you also got to, you know, you got to stand back and say, wow, he can take off any time and score a touchdown running.
Is that the closest comparison you have for Watson? Would it be Kaepernick or someone else?
Well, it'd be right now, just from the standpoint of to younger guys, just from knowing that, you know, a guy like Carson Wentz, you know, he's okay athlete. He's not going to run for 40, 50, but he's going to sit back there. If you're going to pass protection, he's going to throw it. But the thing with Deshaun shows is that he can do both. He can sit back and throw it from the pocket, but also take off and run, you know, for the first down, for the touchdown. And that's when you're as D coordinator, and that's when you're general manager and all that. It makes you nervous going in the game, because I remember playing as Michael Vick. I'm like, what are we going to do? We can rush him. He's going to run. If not, he's going to throw it. And it's just so scary, because you just sit back and in your mind, you think, okay, let's be conservative, keep the game close, and see if we win at the end. And what Deshaun's doing, it's been incredible. I'm amazed. I liked him coming out too, but I didn't know he'd be this good, this quick.
Yeah, I don't think the Bears did either. Or else maybe they would have traded up for him. That's a conversation for another day. It's Scott McLuhan. It's Scott's Spotlight. We really appreciate your time, as always, and your insight. We'll talk to you next week.
Thank you very much.
Hey guys, thanks a lot. Welcome to the Executive Suite. I'm the fantasy executive, Corey Parson. For the better part of the last 2 seasons, Adrian Peterson appeared to be a player on his last legs. His early season stint with the Saints was horrible. He rushed the ball 26 times for 81 yards. Now a member of the Cardinals, Peterson put up AP-type numbers in Week 6, carrying the ball 26 times for 134 yards. That's over 5 yards a pop. Peterson also scored twice behind one of the worst O-lines in football. He won't run like this every week as defenses prepare for him, but he will have volume. In weeks 1 through 5, Carson Palmer threw the football no less than 35 times a game. In Week 6, with Peterson in the backfield, Palmer only threw the ball 22 times and had his highest QB rating of the season by far. That kind of balance on offense is exactly what the Cardinals are looking for. Peterson owners should temper their expectations, but there will be volume there, making him a weekly starter in fantasy leagues. Another running back on the rise is New Orleans Saints running back Mark Ingram. Ingram is a player that's been waiting to explode for a few seasons now. In Week 6, we saw Ingram get a full workload and make the most of it. The Saints running back had season high in snaps, attempts, receptions, and touchdowns against the Lions. Ingram is the clear leader of the Saints backfield and is currently averaging just under 15 fantasy points per game in PPR leagues. Consider Ingram a top 15 fantasy back moving forward. Our Symetra Rising Star for Week 7 of the NFL season is Vikings running back Jerick McKinnon. In the 2 weeks since Dalvin Cook's season-ending injury, McKinnon has rushed the football 32 times for 164 yards. Owners in PPR leagues will also love how much work McKinnon gets in the passing game. McKinnon has 11 receptions for 81 yards in the last 2 weeks. Since taking over for Dalvin Cook, McKinnon is RB3 in PPR formats, averaging 25 fantasy points per game. With Stephon Diggs likely out again in Week 7, look for McKinnon to continue to rack up fantasy points and put up RB1 numbers. I'm the fantasy executive, Corey Parson.
I'm Albert Breer, this is Last Call, and we're going to address the big on-field story of this week. Aaron Rodgers' broken collarbone won't just be a test of his own will, it'll be a test of the Packers' entire program. Let's go back to 2011. The Colts had posted double-digit wins in each of the 9 seasons before that and had a run of 7 straight 12-win seasons in there. In 8 of those 9 years, they were in the top 10 of the NFL in total offense, finishing in the top 4 6 times. Then Peyton Manning got hurt, needed 1 neck surgery, then another, and then another. He lost that year and so did his team. They were 2-14 and came in 30th in the NFL in total offense, their lowest finish in team history. Bill Polian was fired, Jim Caldwell was fired, and the Colts as a franchise started over. Just 3 years before that, the Patriots lost Tom Brady to a torn ACL, and predictably it knocked them off their pace too. 2008 remains the only non-playoff season in New England since 2002. But in narrowly missing their shot at playing into January, they proved something larger. The foundation in Foxborough was rock solid. Matt Castle, a 7th-round pick who hadn't started a game since high school, led New England to an 11-5 mark while piloting the 5th-ranked offense in football. And 8 years later, New England did it again, with Jimmy Garoppolo winning 2 games and Jacoby Brissette leading another victory while Brady was suspended to set the stage for Brady to return and lead the Patriots to a 5th world title. Now, the reason we bring these names up, those are the only ones comparable here. That's just the level that Rodgers is on. And thus far, we've really had just 2 examples of the Packers playing without Rodgers to go on, if you throw away the 2011 season finale. There was Week 15 of 2010 when Matt Flynn came in and threw for 251 yards and 3 touchdowns at New England, almost leading an upset of the Patriots. And there was 2013 when a combination of Flynn, Scott Tolzien, and Seneca Wallace combined to go 2-4-1. And only Flynn managed to post a passer rating of better than 70. Going on that, the Packers right now would be somewhere between where the Patriots and the Colts were. And we'll learn more in the coming weeks. We'll learn what kind of job the Packers have done in developing Brett Hundley and how reliant the offense was on Rodgers to make up for the injuries ravaging the line. We'll learn more about where Randall Cobb and Jordy Nelson are in their careers. And we'll learn about how adaptable the Packers really are, since there was concern before last year's late season surge that they become too Rodgers-centric. Now, to be clear, expectations do need to be adjusted. No one is going to perform at the same level after losing a transcendent talent like Rodgers. So asking them to be who they have been would be absolutely ridiculous. But seeing just how different it looks will tell us plenty about who the Packers are and where their ceiling might be as Rodgers enters his mid-30s.